Hey everybody, my name is Mandeep. I'm here to present Electrip, where we're enabling EV transportation. So when you're traveling city to city, it really sucks. And that's especially true when you're going between one major city and another located less than 4 hours apart by car. That's because flights are incredibly stressful and delayed when you don't even spend that much time in the air. By the time you get through security, by the time you get through the boarding process, you're exhausted, you're tired, and your door-to-door time is basically the same as driving. When you take a bus, you have all those same inconveniences, but you have to go to a central pickup point well out of your way, and you have to work on that bus's schedule. If you're a busy professional and a client wants you to show up at 7 a.m., you're not going to be able to make it there on that same day. You have to take the bus the day before, and you have to get a hotel room. It's just not convenient. Driving is probably the worst option. If you're going from one city to another located around 3 hours apart, if you have to do a day trip, that's 6 hours of lost productivity. And when you do that after a 10-hour workday, it's incredibly unsafe. Over 300,000 drowsy driving accidents happen every single year. And that's because people are overworking themselves. And this isn't a small problem. There are over 900,000 individuals in 7 national markets that travel every single week between one major metropolitan area and another. And they're having to make one of those 3 compromises every single time they do it. And that's why we created Electrip. Electrip is a door-to-door travel service between any major Texas city in private, professionally driven Teslas. All of our vehicles come with Wi-Fi and laptop charging. And we've been able to optimize the model to provide all of this value to our clients for the price of one plane ticket. And since our launch in March of 2018, we've serviced over 1,000 rides, saving over 250,000 tons of CO2 from entering the atmosphere. Our focus on consistency and safety has landed us partnerships with some of the largest companies in our beachhead market. So let's look at a case study we did with Deloitte. No matter what travel option they were using before, they would have to lose some amount of productivity shuffling in and out. When they switched to Electrip, they increased their billable hours per partner by $15,000 a month. When they walk out of their office, a car is waiting for them. They sit down, the driver hands them a lap desk, the laptop auto-connects to Wi-Fi, and they can keep working, just like it was an office on wheels for them. Imagine how many times they'd had to close their laptops when they used a flight before. So we know that transportation is very competitive, and as soon as you show people they can make money, they move into that space. And so there are 3 ways that we fight off competition. The first is properly using EVs. The second, which is our secret sauce, it's our infrastructure partnerships. And the third is our corporate clientele. Let's start with EVs. EVs are 1/5 the cost of internal combustion engine vehicles to operate. That allows us to charge $250 one way between Houston and Austin, which is our most popular route, or $300 for the round trip. Our all-in cost is around $150, giving us a margin of $100. But in order to properly use EVs, you have to train drivers who have never touched a Tesla on how they work. A competitor copy and pasted our business model in 2019, and they were out of business within 6 months. They had multiple cars die en route. They had drivers who felt so unsure with the vehicle. You felt unsafe in the back. Like, what's the point of working on a PowerPoint if you don't even know if you're going to get there to present? So it's really important to train your drivers effectively. We created a 9-step training process that allows us to take the top 5% of Uber and Lyft drivers and train them to be even better. They love driving for our platform because it's consistent pay with quality clientele. So we have over 90 drivers on our platform, with more trying to add on to the system every single day. The next thing that we had to solve was, how do we get more Teslas? Like, I'm a college kid. Like, no one's willing to give me loans for cars. So we had to find ways to borrow current Tesla owners' vehicles. Some people bought Teslas, and it was their most expensive car purchase by 40%. Some people just have too many cars, and so they're looking for ways to utilize their vehicles more, and they rent on Turo. Turo is the Airbnb for cars, but you don't know who's getting in it, you don't know if they've ever used a Tesla before, and you don't know where they're going. On our platform, you book it out for 12-hour blocks, a trained driver picks it up with trusted clientele on a set route and returns it right back to you. That's allowed us to expand to new markets rapidly and lower our burn rate, and it also allows us to have over 30 vehicles on our platform. And again, more and more people are trying to join every day. But the real secret sauce here, when Waymo tried to move into Nevada, they had to spend $80 million on parking and charging infrastructure for just a 25-mile radius. Because we're partnering with business owners and homeowners that already have parking lots and ample time to clean and charge the car, we're able to reduce our labor rates by up to 25 to 50% by placing the vehicles closer to where our drivers and clients are. And so we're rapidly expanding into this market. And lastly, our corporate focus, we're really safety and reputation focused. That allows us to get consistent travelers that pay in upfront cash. We signed a major deal with Shell, and we have a lot more in the works. And that allowed us to buy 2 vehicles for our static fleet, just cash on the spot. So here's some of the key statistics. In 2018, we made 12,000. In 2019, we made 140. In 2020, with the contracts we started and closed this year, we're on track for 800,000. We've done this with $0 in outside investment. This is completely bootstrapped, and we have $0 in paid advertising. I printed out some flyers, but for the most part, we didn't pay. And what Electrip is really doing is building out the future for autonomous electric fleets. So much like this presentation, my personality is incredibly business first. I haven't even told you how I got here, so I'd like to take a moment to do that. I actually never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I know the irony of saying that on this stage, but I always loved the consistency and the safety of a paycheck. And that's because I experienced what incorrect entrepreneurship can do to someone's family. My dad jumped from failed business to failed business, and it put a lot of strain on our family. And back then, entrepreneurship was very isolated. It was very solitary. He didn't have a forum group to talk to or a Slack message channel to ask questions about. And so it was a lot difficult. It was a lot more difficult for him. What that meant was, since about the age of 4, my mom supported our family in her entirety. And I actually didn't know that until about 2 years ago, right about the time of this picture. I had come home for the holidays, and I was happy to see my family. But at that time, a pipe busted in my mom's room, and some mold was growing. So the repair guy comes, gives her a quote for $1,100. In my mind, I think, $1,100, Mom, you work 2 jobs, you have 1 weekend off every month, like that's nothing. But she pushed back on it. And I didn't think much of it until that night, when I heard something that I don't want to hear again, ever. It broke me down to my core. You see, that night, I woke up because her closet and my room share a wall. And she had locked herself in there and was crying her eyes out because for the last 2 years, she had been paying off $150,000 of credit card debt from my dad's last business. And she just couldn't see a way to get out from underneath it. I couldn't sleep that night. And so that next morning, when I found all this out, when I talked to her about it, I was actually about to tell her, hey, Mom, guess what? I turned down my 6-figure offer to pursue Electrip full-time. And that was going to be the way that we got that new house. That was going to be the way that she was going to get out of that debt. But I was already stuck. I had already made my decision. I tried calling the company. They didn't pick up. But I had to stick with it. I had to stick to my guns. And I knew the only way that I would be able to survive entrepreneurship, supporting myself financially so I wouldn't be a burden on her the next semester, and school, was to adopt 3 values that I believe my mom amplifies in the way that she got through her hardships. So the first one that my company holds is extreme ownership. What this means in practice is that when the cars got back from their city-to-city rides, or let's say it was a slow Sunday and no one was taking a ride, I would get in the vehicle and start driving on Uber and Lyft. And that's actually how we got a lot of our first clients. I had flyers in the back, and I would tell the Deloitte and PwC consultants, hey, you guys just flew here from Dallas. You wasted so much time. What are you guys doing? Use an Electrip. And that really started to get us a lot of traction. It's also how I met my first EO member and ended up here. So what was really awesome about this was when I saw my team adopting these values. Once they saw how hard I was willing to work for the company, they started adopting that. And this message in our Slack group just exemplifies what that can do for an organization. The second value that I adopted was framing your work. Even after a long day of work, my mom would come home and create dinner not only for us, but also a separate one for our grandparents. That shows unequivocally that she cares about us. And I wanted my customers to feel the exact same way. And so no matter how tired we would go clean the vehicles when they got back in those coin-operated washing machines. It didn't matter. Whatever we could do to show the customers that we cared, we did that. And the last value that we adopted was finishing the race. If you take 1,000 steps in 1,000 directions, you're never going to get anywhere. And my mom set a path and didn't let anything stop her. So we have that same ethos. We will continue to go past the people that say, hey, you're just Uber. Hey, you're just this. Hey, you're just that. We're going to keep growing. And we're not going to let people stop us. And it shows in the way that we organize our team. We're all engineers, so we love Trello boards. It's hard when you're being an entrepreneur, when you're a student, when people always are setting you back. But this is the goal that I'm working towards. And so it's easier for me to keep going. Thank you.
All right. 10 minutes questions begins now.
Thank you for that. That was really good. Thank you. I guess my question is, what's keeping you up at night now about your company? We all have one thing in our company that's really bothering us. And what is that for you, and how do you feel like you're going to overcome it?
It used to be liability, but then I found out that insurance brokers exist and they're willing to do whatever to get that policy and risk covered as long as you're willing to pay. So that's not it anymore. What it is for me is, my dad over-levered himself, and now I'm in the same position where I can now raise debt financing, and that's really scary for me, but I'm in a position where I almost have to do it. We're getting contracts from some of the largest sports teams in the state for all of their travel for box ticket holders. Not only is that a great opportunity in terms of advertising, but it's a great revenue model. The problem is I will over-lever the company, and that scares me because there are dips in demand. And when we use Flex Fleet, we can easily handle that. When we buy our own cars, it is 30% cheaper than Flex Fleet. There is a risk of carrying that debt.
Congratulations, that was amazing. I wanted to ask you, when you were saying that it was hard to figure out a way to tell your mom of what you were doing now and your plan, how have you been able to handle that? What do you think she feels now that you are working in all of this?
So she found out because UT made this bombastic article, and so I actually never even told her, but it was when we signed that Shell deal. It was on the front page of the Houston Chronicles. She's reading the news, and she's like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, okay, I guess I should tell you. The hardest part about that was I don't want to let her down. Dude, you know how it is when you have people coming from another country and they work so hard because they don't want you to suffer the same way they did. It took her 8 years to get her bachelor's degree because she worked 2 jobs the whole way. And I don't want her to feel like because of something that she couldn't control, she's now jeopardizing the future that she worked so hard for me to get. So that's probably the hardest part emotionally. But I try to show her, my goal at this competition was to become friends with my finals judges. That's it. Because whether this works or not, I want to make sure that I can move on to the next thing strong and not decapitated from the last one.
Congratulations. Amazing story and a great product and service. What makes you think that you're here right now? You're one of the 5 finalists. And how do you see yourself after the competition? Where? Doing what?
Yeah, so when I get back, I'm going to need to get into a couple meetings. So we have a bunch of meetings signed up with law firms. So that's my most immediate task that I'm going to have to handle. Long term, I've been able to get 4 people on my team that are incredibly skilled. They're all engineers, so they're very process oriented, but it allows us to find what works and then find a way to replicate it. So for example, we found that LinkedIn shares were so valuable to attracting new customers. And so with my very process oriented team, we found a way to automate that. So now I have to ask myself as CEO, what is the most valuable thing that I can provide to my team? And I believe that's going to be the larger corporate partnerships as well as the financing to get the company to the point where we can service those rides. And so that's kind of the path I'm going down. Also, our strongest competitive moat right now is our parking and charging infrastructure. We are building a future for autonomous electric vehicles. And this is a very profitable, somewhat defensible business model that we can use to fund that development. And so my goal is to work with the hotel owners, with the restaurant owners, with the homeowners that have that space available to build that out for our company.
Can you tell me a little more about your team? What are the roles? And then if you were given the ability to hire one more person, what would be the role that you would fill?
Yeah, absolutely. So my team, again, very heavily engineering based. We handle whatever problem as it comes out, and my company is divided into supply and demand. I know that's some ridiculous engineer's way of interpreting business, but that's really how we do it. We try to manage our expectations for demand growth with our expectations for supply growth. We have one Excel spreadsheet that tracks all of that so the teams understand what's going on. So it's divided 2 and 2. One great example is right now we're dealing with the driver pipeline. We're trying to make it better and better because we realize how valuable that is. So one of the 4 people are tasked to that right now. Once that's complete, there will be another fire that pops up that we put out. The one team member, the one area of expertise where we really don't have a strong grasp on is, I would say, technology development. So we've done a lot of the coding in VBA, in Excel, to balance the rides, and it's super clunky, and it's not very scalable. So right now, we can automate and comfortably handle 5 to 10 rides a day, but once we get to 25, 50, we know we're going to need a better system.
Thank you.
Great job, Mandeep. So I'd love to know about 2 moments The moment you thought you had to give up and the moment you knew this is really going to work?
Yeah, the moment that I thought I'd have to give up was in December of 2018. So that at that same time, my mom had just come out and told me this is what's going on in the family. And because 90% of my customers are corporate, my demand dropped by 50, 60%. And so it's really nice when the graph is doing this, but when it does this, you get really scared. And even if it's just a one-time moment, it's still terrifying. It's still petrifying. So that was probably the most. And then the second part of your question, would you mind repeating?
The moment you knew this is really going to work, or do you know yet?
Yeah, when we signed that Shell contract, and literally the next day, Exxon called and said, "Hey, what's going on? We want one." So that was a really powerful moment for me, and it kept me going.
What's your biggest fear in life?
Being alone. I know what it did to my dad. He's the best driver on the electric platform right now. He literally consistently gets the highest ratings, and it's so infuriating to me. It's so funny. But yeah, he was alone, through those many years as an entrepreneur, and I know what that would do to me. I love friends. I love all the people that were in my prelim rooms that cheered so loud when I advanced. That's what I care about, and that's what I know will hurt me the most if I lose.
What's your biggest dream?
Right now, I'm not sure, but I would love a world where it's cool to have clean air. I don't know why it's not cool to have clean air. Like, I love the fact that EVs can be charged with, cleaner natural gas plants that are offset from urban city centers, and so you have less pollution in those areas. I went to Mumbai for the first time a couple years ago, and my nose immediately started bleeding because of all the heavy diesel fuel, and the pollution was just ridiculous. I can't imagine that people are living in environments like that. And right now, EVs are too expensive to own independently in those cities, but if you can increase the utilization rate to 90, 95%, it makes sense.
So how much market research have you done, say, in the U.S. as to how many cities are within that distance, and what's the opportunity?
Yeah, so 900,000 individuals are what are called supercommuters. That's who we're targeting. That's over a $10 billion market, and that's because that's very consistent, repeatable travel. We've also gotten offers from the ski resorts in Colorado to try to get people to and forth. So that's a separate market entirely. We did that research with NYU, so they actually sent a report to us, and we checked their data. And we're engineers, so we can do that. Yeah, that's how we found our market.
I got two questions for you. As a fellow engineer, I started my business as an engineer, and now I don't even consider myself an engineer.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you're on that path where you're going more toward, I'm an entrepreneur? And then secondly, we all need something to take us away from our business. What do you do that gets you out of your business and just enjoy life?
Yeah, absolutely. So the only engineering thing I did last week was I calculated how much more range we would get if we dropped the pressure on our tire, or increased the pressure on our tires by 4 PSI. That's like it. And then everything else was like calls with lawyers and this and that and my accountant and all that. So yes, I'm moving away from it. I don't know if I like that because I really love that process-oriented mindset. But I found that lots of things in life can be applied to that mentality, as I'm sure you can attest to. And then what I do for fun, me and the boys, we'll get together, play some Catan, have a beer. That's like really nice to me. I really just spending time with my friends because I don't get to do it as much anymore. And then I also picked up cooking. So my mom's a vegetarian, so I never used to eat meat, but I love salmon. And oh man, one of my friends let me try steak, and now I'm just kind of hooked. So I've been learning how to cook that.
You mentioned you have $800,000 in revenue.
Yes.
Any profits, and also how does the finances work? How do you pay your drivers? How do you pay the flex fleet, et cetera?
So they're 1099, our drivers, which helps us, cut down taxes. But yeah, so and then how do we mechanically pay them? Like what system do we use?
No percentages.
Gotcha. So our drivers are paid 15 an hour and 10 if they're just waiting for a client. So if they're just in a city, just hanging out. And then our owners are paid a variable rate based on the model of Tesla they have. So it could be as low as 25 cents per mile. It could be as high as 35 cents per mile. And then plus bonuses depending on, like a Model X is obviously going to get compensated way higher.
And profit?
Oh yeah, of course. So our margins, operating margins are around 50%. So we definitely took home a lot in 2019. And it did help a lot in the family. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your school life. Where are you and how are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm taking 10 hours right now, senior design and an entrepreneur class. So it's fun. See you guys.